Thank you to all for being here. This is a topic that I always enjoy discussing, and as an entrepreneur myself, and have the experience of raising capital over the last 8 years in the private sector, it's a thrill, and sometimes it's not. But it's an interesting time, especially with all of the macroeconomics, not only here in the United States but around the world as well. And there's the old saying that capital is cowardly. And there's times that we hope. I mean, every project is a worthwhile project, but we also know that not every project works out. In fact, the majority of them don't work out. And so it does. We do have to be careful in that it's not just loose, and that there's people that are taken advantage of. But at the same time, this is also what makes America the greatest nation on earth. And I've got a bill that I'd like to ask Ms. Matthews-Burkeen a question about. My bill is the Investment Opportunity Expansion Act, which would allow an individual to qualify as an accredited investor if their aggregate investment is an unregistered securities offering, if it's not more than 10% of the individual's net assets or the individual's annual income, whichever is greater. How would expanding the accredited investor definition while limiting an investor's risk exposure benefit Main Street investors and ultimately strengthening our capital markets?
It would give people an incredible opportunity. So I mentioned earlier, there are lots of other things that we can spend our money on. We can spend our money on cryptocurrency, sports betting, you name it, but not necessarily things that we can really generate wealth from. That would be a wealth generating opportunity for people across the country. I think putting guardrails, to the earlier congressman's point, is necessary to protect people, because we are in a moment where consumers need to be protected.
Yeah. Would anybody else on the panel like to comment on accredited investors, the increase?
I think the way the accredited investor definition works today, it really does not allow for individuals who can understand and financially afford the risk to take it. If you happen to be born rich, then you're presumed to be a brilliant investor, but really you were born rich.
Yeah, no. Well, and one of the things that I often see is that a lot of folks in the Midwest, in Indiana, where I'm from, they want to invest in Indiana. And they would, and it's also nice to be able to see wherever you place your money that you can drive down the street and go visit and ask questions. And I think that's an important component to it as well. Ms. Matthews-Burkeen, I've got another question as well related to crowdfunding. We had a really good subcommittee hearing on capital markets last month, in which we heard several witnesses on how we can expand access to capital for businesses. But many diverse founders and small businesses outside the traditional capital hubs have found funding opportunities through regulation crowdfunding. Why is this an important tool? Is it an important tool moving forward? And is there any particular comments you have to raising capital as in the crowdfunding mechanism?
No, crowdfunding definitely fills a gap for folks that have difficulty around raising friends and family rounds. So it gives that new opportunity. I will say that it does not necessarily signal to professional investors, however, that that investment is a good investment. So there are a lot of learnings that have to be had around crowdfunding as well. It's one thing to go out to the crowd, but likes don't necessarily generate revenue for a company. It's all about whether or not that company is sustainable over time beyond that moment of the big push of the crowdfunding campaign.
Are you seeing crowdfunding still as, I mean, there was kind of a spike there in popularity with it. Is it settling, or is it still a popular option? Where do you think it's going right now?
I would say a year ago it was much more popular. I'd say we're living in a moment right now of volatility where people aren't spending their extra cash on crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah, I think the economy is really tight right now. People just don't have disposable income because either they could spend it in investments or they could spend it on going out to eat, and I think we're seeing that it's not happening in either one. Mr. Trotter, I'd like to ask you, I've got a bill that's called the Regulation A+ Improvement Act, which would increase the amount that companies can raise under Regulation A from $50 million to $150 million. Any thoughts or comments, good, bad, indifferent?
Step in the right direction. I think it's a helpful move.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you again to all of you. And this is, you know, interesting times. Of course, we have a lot of decisions to make here in Washington that will affect our economy, but those decisions do affect startups, those affect growth, and hopefully we make the right decisions that people will feel confident that they can invest again and with certainty that it's a good investment.